Coming up on Network Africa, Chad bans every protest in the country amid threats of an imminent militant attack. Military government in Sudan lifts the state of emergency in place since the coup in October. Plus, devastating effects of the war in Ukraine hitting Africa's most vulnerable as cost of aid supply rises. Hello and welcome to the program. This week, I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Burkina Faso, where investigations are ongoing in Pekoa zinc mine as two more dead bodies have been recovered, bringing the total of victims to 6. 2 miners are still missing. Unexpected torrential rains flooded the mine 6 weeks ago, trapping 8 miners working at a depth of more than 500 meters. Well, despite diminishing hopes, rescue efforts continue and experts have been flown in from Canada, Australia and South Africa to help with the operations. The victims include 1 Tanzanian, 1 Zambian and 6 Burkinabés. Authorities are yet to reveal the identities of the bodies that were recovered. The junta in Chad is warning of an imminent militant attack in the capital in N'Djamena amid tension due to opposition protests. The communication ministry says there is a very high terrorist alert in the city, which has forced the ban of all public demonstrations. It adds that the alert followed reports that 3 terrorists, probably from Boko Haram, managed to infiltrate in N'Djamena over the weekend, citing official sources who said that the suspected militants are still at large. Rumors of an imminent attack were sparked by heavy deployment of security forces on major roads in N'Djamena. At least 38 people were killed and dozens more injured in a Boko Haram attack in the capital back in 2015. Let's speak now on this development in Chad. Joining us now is security analyst David Otto for more discussions. Hello, David. Thank you for speaking to us. Chad is one of the Sahel countries that have been fighting insurgency. How far would you say they've gone in tackling the menace?
I think not far enough. Of course, fighting an insurgency of this nature, it's not just for one country. Chad is a landlocked country that is surrounded by Niger Republic, Libya, Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, and just on the side of its capital, N'Djamena, you've got Nigeria. So it's not about how much Chad has done within its own national territory. Of course, you know that the government is currently being run by a military junta under Mahatma Idris Deby, who is the son of the late Idris Deby, who allegedly was killed, in the front line by rebels. So, Chad has multiple threats. It doesn't just have terrorist groups coming from, along the borders from Nigerian side to deal with. I think, there is more room for further coordination and collaboration. I think since the demise of Idris Deby, we have seen very little coordination as we used to see before. With the Chadian military forces working hand in gloves with countries along its borders, under the multinational joint task force. But of course, Chad has, very strong ties again with the G5 Sahel, which, it's another military coalition. But, they haven't gone far enough because, this is not one country playing God in the region. It has to do with a very robust coordination from all its surrounding territories.
So speaking of that coordination, you just spoke about, the Sahel region is very volatile, and the G5 that you mentioned, these are countries that are trying to secure the region. But there's been some friction lately, I'm sure you're aware, Mali pulling out of the G5 Sahel. This is sure to have an impact, isn't it?
Of course, it's going to have an impact. The reason why Mali pulled out is because, the Malian junta itself argued that, it was not allowed to play its role within the G5 mandate. Mali was meant to, host, and its president represented as the head of the G5. But when it came to its turn, it was refused because, of course, Mali is under sanction from ECOWAS, the African Union, but also from the European Union as a result of not just the double military coup d'etats, but because, of course, it has also cut ties with France. And, that means there is a gap that has been created by Mali's decision to withdraw or sever ties with the G5 Sahel. So it's not different from, some of the behaviors of Chad in the past, whereby they've withdrawn their forces in locations where they were supposed to be stationed. So I think you still need much more commitment and some kind of collaboration from these nations in order for us to see some kind of a semblance of effectiveness in counterinsurgency operations. Right now, I think there is still that high level of suspicion between the various countries in terms of, how they engage in these coordinations.
Well, just finally, David, let me get your thoughts on this. Zooming into Mali, the military government, like you've mentioned, have severed ties with France, but it is turned into Russia.
Of course, I think Mali has, again, the national sovereign right to, turn to any country that it does believe, will provide the best, strategy for it to fight against its national insurgency and, build its defense and security capability. If that is, supposed to be Russia, then, of course, that is what the Malians, have to make a decision. I mean, it is down to Mali to decide based on its own assessment of what France brings on board or what it has brought on board since the launch of Operation Barkhane in 2012. The Malians have argued, the military junta, of course, that that has not been an effective relationship with France and that, their national sovereignty has always been undermined. According to the government, Russia is providing some kind of a defense and security partnership with no strings attached. And I think that is what seems to be a preferable partner at the moment. So let's see how that, pans out to be. But the entire region still needs to fall back to each other. And we want to see much more collaboration from countries like Nigeria coming into, the assistance of these, broader African countries, because, of course, this is a matter of national and regional stability for all countries in the region.
All right, then, security analyst David Otto, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Sudan's military government has lifted a state of emergency, which it imposed after seizing power in a coup 6 months ago. The country's ruling Security and Defense Council said the decision was made at a meeting headed by the military leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. It says the move is aimed at creating the right atmosphere for dialogue. However, protest against the military government has continued since the coup in October. Clashes with police are said to have killed nearly 100 people. In recent days, security forces have arrested many protesters, targeting the leaders of the resistance movement. In the meantime, the trial for 4 Sudanese protesters accused of killing a police officer earlier this year has begun in Khartoum amid anti-military demonstrators and heavy police presence. The 4 men are accused of the fatal stabbing of a police brigadier general back in January, and they were in the courtroom on Sunday, raising their fists and making victory signs. All the men who have become emblems of the anti-military protest movement deny the charges laid against them. Families and the lawyers representing the men have also accused authorities of torturing at least one of them, known by his nickname Tupac. Lawyer Abdelazim Hassan, who is part of the legal team representing the men, said the judge hearing the case ordered that the men undergo a medical examination, while Sudanese military leaders have said that the men are subject to normal criminal procedures. Somalia's new president, Hassan Mohamud, says political and social reconciliation and security reforms in the country is his administration's priority. On Monday, he also applauded the return of U.S. troops to help fight a deadly insurgence in the country and said delivering security depends on reconciliation with other Somali leaders after a power battle splintered the security forces into rival factions.
We are very much grateful for President Biden to send back some of the forces that left here. And they always have been playing a role in the war against Al-Shabaab. And we want them to continue that support. And they have been building the capacity. They have been mentoring the Somali National Army. They have been training and equipping them. So it's an opportunity for us to have those forces in the ground right now. Reconciliation is a priority area for my administration, and we divided it into two: one for political reconciliation and social reconciliation. For social reconciliation, we're going to establish down the lowest level of governance structures are create part social reconciliation, because social reconciliation relates to local conflicts, local issues, so it's a local. We don't want social reconciliation as such. Somalia has done a lot of social reconciliation. Now what we need is that structure that follow up the social reconciliation at the local level. But the political reconciliation is the one that up to now, although many times has been attempted, it has not been successful so far.
8 projects across sub-Saharan Africa are threatened by the fallout from the war in Ukraine, and agencies say this is potentially putting millions of lives at risk. Humanitarian agencies already struggling with the widespread price increases under the COVID-19 pandemic say the crisis in Europe has made things worse. Even the cost of life-saving therapeutic foods for malnourished children has spiked.
At a camp for displaced families in the Somali town of Dolo, 1-year-old Hassan is weighed in a plastic bucket, suspended from a scale by a medical technician as his mother, Hassan Abiba Muhammad Nur, watches on. Muhammad Nur says the Al-Shabaab militant group and a crippling drought in a village forced her to flee with Hassan.
I fled from Al-Shabaab and the severe drought that hit our village, and we lost our livestock. I didn't get any aid there, and my child is very sick and malnourished. He has diarrhea and fever, so I brought him here for treatment.
Hassan, who 3 months ago weighed only 5.2 kilograms, about half of what a boy his age should weigh, began receiving treatment for severe acute malnutrition at a clinic run by aid workers in the south of the country. Over 3 months, Hassan's weight has climbed to 5.6 kilograms. His partial recovery is thanks to a sweet peanut paste called plum peanut, developed by French scientists in 1900, that has become a crucial weapon in the fight against child malnutrition. 3 small sachets a day for 6 weeks can be enough to bring a starving child back to full health, according to UNICEF. UNICEF says it spends $137 million a year on the therapeutic food, and the overall market is estimated to be worth up to $400 million. But aid agency says it is becoming too expensive. UNICEF's regional director, Rania Dagesh, says the fundamental issue in Somalia was drought, but that the Ukraine crisis had significantly hiked prices of resources.
The fundamental issue in Somalia and in the Horn at the moment is a climate-induced crisis, right? It's drought. But where the effects of the Ukraine crisis come in is that the food prices and fuel prices and others are hiked up to a point where we need more resources to secure what we would have secured before. We need a lot more.
Action Against Hunger, a charity with operations across Africa, has seen the cost of foodstuffs such as rice, oil, and sugar rise 20% to 30% over the past year.
Commodity prices have almost doubled in Somalia, and in some parts, 93% high. The humanitarian appeal for Somalia is only 15% funded. So what we need now is money. We need the cash to avert the risk of famine.
UNICEF says it predicts that prices of therapeutic foods will rise 16% in the next 6 months because of Ukraine and pandemic disruptions. It says without further funding, 600,000 more children may miss out on the treatment.
Still to come on the program. From London to Lagos on his motorbike, Nigerian man Kule Adeyanju completes a 13,000-kilometer ride for polio campaign. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. The United Nations World Food Programme says it is seriously concerned about the soaring food prices that are pushing the poor to the brink of hunger in the landlocked southern African country of Malawi. WFP spokesperson Thomson Phiri says with nearly 400,000 Malawians already food insecure due to floods and droughts and the impact of COVID-19, the challenges are now further exacerbated by the effects of the Ukraine crisis.
United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, is seriously concerned about the soaring food prices that are pushing the poor to the brink of hunger in Malawi. WFP assessment has found that these challenges are now further exacerbated by the effects of the Ukraine crisis. 50% of Malawi's population is already living in poverty, on less than $2 a day. Prior even to these price hikes, the price of bread has increased by 50% in the last 3 months. Interviews with bakery owners reveal that the retail price of a 50-kilogram bag of wheat flour has risen by 42% since the onset of the Ukraine crisis.
Lawmakers in the Central African Republic have voted to abolish the death penalty. The law was passed by acclamation as the Speaker of the National Assembly made the announcement. For the legislation to become law, President Faustin Archange Touadera still has to issue it. However, reactions have been trailing the announcement, with right group Amnesty International calling it good news, urging President Touadera to issue the legislation. Residents in Bangui, the nation's capital, have also welcomed the news, calling it a great source of joy. The last official execution in the Central African Republic took place in 1981. The country now follows Chad in 2020 and Sierra Leone last year in banning capital punishment on the African continent in recent years. Last Tuesday, Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema announced that he asked his parliament to consider removing the death penalty from the laws of the land. Legislative proposals on the capital punishment have also advanced in Ghana. A criminal court in Egypt has sentenced a former presidential candidate to 15 years in prison with hard labor. Abdel Moneim Abdul Futu, who is 70 years old and is said to be in poor health, was convicted along with an interim leader of the proscribed Muslim Brotherhood group, Mahmoud Ezzat, of disseminating fake news and joining a terrorist group. Mr. Abdul Futu was arrested in 2018 upon his return from Britain. While in London, he gave several media interviews in which he criticized President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's rule. In the meantime, the defendants have said they can appeal their sentences. In South Africa, at least 10 people have died after a bus crashed on the N3 in Mpumalanga in the east of the country. Reports say the driver lost control of the vehicle in the incident, which is described as having caused absolute devastation, leaving dead bodies on the ground. The driver is thought to have driven into a pillar, causing the bus to drive into a stream. Several people were also injured in Sunday morning's accident. A military spokesperson in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo says 2 Rwandan soldiers have been captured by villagers just a day after Kigali claimed they were captured by pro-government rebels. According to General Sylvain Ekenge, the Rwandan soldiers were captured by residents of Bishwea Kingdom, about 20 kilometers away from the border. He claims the 2 soldiers entered DR Congo last Wednesday to attack the Runagambo military camp before they were captured by residents. On Saturday, Rwanda said the 2 soldiers were being held captive in eastern DRC by the Rwandan Hutu militia, which it says gets support from Kinshasa. DR Congo has ramped up its offensive against the M23 rebels in North Kivu province. The rebels, who have been driven out of DR Congo in 2013, are believed to have regrouped and retaken strategic areas. Rwanda has also deployed troops to its borders with DR Congo because of the clashes. Head of the African Union, President Macky Sall of Senegal, has expressed concerns at the rising tensions between the 2 countries. A Nigerian biker, Kunle Adeyanju, has completed a 13,000-kilometer journey from London to Lagos, riding to raise funds to support the fight against polio in Africa. Mr. Adeyanju left London on the 19th of April, his trip spanning across 13 countries. The 44-year-old was greeted to cheers from the crowd who gathered in anticipation of his arrival on Sunday. The adventurer reached the border between Benin and Nigeria on Sunday after he embarked on the trip to raise funds in support of the fight for the eradication of polio. The former Shell employee self-funded his trip with 19,000 euros in savings, hoping to raise up to 20 million naira for Rotary International. Well, his London to Lagos mission may have ended, but he says he will soon be busy again, embarking on a new journey, riding from Lagos to Israel, then through Asia, heading to the Tibetan plateau. He then wants to ride to Everest base camp and attempt to climb Mount Everest. We wish him all the best in his adventure. But finally, on the program, a female coach in the Democratic Republic of Congo sets her mind to the regional championships. She is the first female coach to train a men's soccer team in North Kivu province.
As the first female coach training a men's soccer team in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Salama Miruho Jasmine is considered a trailblazer, but she wears that status lightly, preferring to focus on the job at hand. Jasmine is head coach at Daring Club Virunga, one of the top teams in North Kivu province. And with the National Football League expected to soon publish its calendar of fixtures for next season, her mind is on training and match preparation.
With the work I have done with my players, I feel confident. We are now just waiting for the National Football League to publish the calendar. We must be ready for that. It's the reason we are always training, because players cannot stay without training. Training helps prepare for matches. For now, we are still waiting for them to decide. At the moment, I still continue to supervise the players so that when the championship resumes, we are ready.
Soccer is a family affair for the 33-year-old Jasmine. Her father was a referee and her 5 brothers all played the sport. She was a player too at the club as Simba until she decided to train and qualify as a professional coach. She first came to DC Virunga as an intern, but following a dispute at the club, the coaching team left and she found herself promoted to head coach. She said she anticipated potential difficulties due to her gender, but in fact, there was none.
These players listen to me and follow instructions and do this work well. I feel very good. I'm comfortable. It is a big pleasure. I think it is the first time, not just in Goma, in this town, but in the whole of the country.
Meli Mongolare considers it a pleasure to be trained by a female coach.
It's a big pleasure because I think it's the first time, not just in Goma, in this town, but in all of the country. I think it's the first team who try to train with the lady coach. So it's the big pleasure for me to train with the lady coach.
With no challenges whatsoever, Jasmine is focused as she targets the regional championship.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.